Kane is in the building.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jim. This is Talking Sip. Today, I am with the first ever MHSAA, which is Mississippi High School Activity Association, for those not familiar, state champion father and daughter. JC won a state title about 20 years ago, almost exactly 20 years ago, 2006. And Millie won one just a few weeks ago. So Millie says, here's a little bit fresher. I've got plenty to go back with on your dad. So I'm going to let you kind of talk about it, and I'll let your dad give a perspective about how everything went and kind of how you found powerlifting. Was it purely because of your dad? Kind of go from there.
So about this time last year, I decided that I was going to let soccer go because I played soccer all through middle school. And so my dad mentioned powerlifting, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I can try it. So a few months later, we went to the gym one day, and we tried all the lifts for a time, and I found out that might be something that I wanted to do. So I just continued on with it from there, and I went all the way.
Yeah, I'll say quite exciting. And so something that slipped by me that I didn't realize until I was doing a little bit of background, I didn't realize you're only a freshman.
Yes, I am. Just a freshman.
That's incredible because as your dad will tell you, and as other people will tell you, I mean, state championships are not easy to come by, and to have yourself in position to possibly win 4 is insane. Because even winning 2 is tough. You know, Chris Tran's one of the best lifters in the history of the state of Mississippi and really the whole U.S. And he won 2.
I'm very thankful for Chris to help me through my journey the entire time. He was very helpful.
Yeah, he's definitely he's probably the best powerlifting mind outside of my mentor Eric, who we were talking about before we went on. You know, it's crazy. He looks at things like so many other people don't, and it shows, and that's why he's had the success he has, you know, as a coach and as a lifter. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, obviously we kind of mentioned that you won. I understand there was a little excitement at the state championship and kind of how it broke down. I'd like to get your perspective, and then your dad's going to give a different perspective that he called to tell me about. That ends up being a little bit of a throwback. So let's talk about that. Walk me through the day of the state championship.
So the day of the state championship, I woke up, I got ready, and ate the terrible hotel breakfast. And I was so mad about that because I wanted Waffle House and couldn't find out there's a Waffle House across the street. So I guess it's just a good luck charm, I guess. So then we headed out to the Coliseum, and I got all ready, and I went and warmed up. I took it slow, so I wasn't rushing my warm-ups too fast, and I think I was mentally there for sure. And when I got into my first lift, I knew there was one girl that I was going to be head-to-head with the whole time because all of our lifts were the same, and she ended up hurting herself on her third squat, so that put me ahead. And then we move on to bench. I did 100 on bench, and the most I did was 285 on squat, but they didn't give it to me because of commands. So the most I did was 265. And I know it sucks. And I guess I was just too excited because I had just PR'd at state championship. So
well, it happens. I tell you, so you only gave up 20. One that sticks with me and might have put me in a different position myself when I was lifting is I ended up giving about 70 up because I was so excited and I pushed through and I just dragged that right foot and can't do that. So
it's so,
you know, I don't think I ever missed anything on a football ever again. But yeah, but I still remember those even now.
Yeah, it sucked. So then I ended up doing 100 on bench, and this girl that had weighed over at the South State meet, she had scratched on bench, which she was going to be one of my bigger problems in deadlift because she was so good at deadlifting. And so she scratched out on bench. So I was like, okay, things are really starting to go my way today. So I go,
Everything's coming up Millie.
we get the little break, and I go eat a snack and stuff. And I'm just like, my mom's telling me, you know, like go pull all you can. And then I went and warmed up again, and I met a new girl who, I really looked up to her because she was opening up with 305 or something. And I was like, okay. I was like, I want to pull some big weight today. So I walk over there and we start, and what my dad was telling me, and I didn't know, I try not to look at the board because now I know how to read it, and it kind of stresses me out. So my dad didn't tell me, but if I pulled 300, I would have like locked in third. Chris was like, just let her pull 305. He's over there being the calculator up here. And I'm like, this is crazy. So the girl from Kosciuszko was gonna pull 320, throwback, and I went and pulled 305. So after me, she goes to pull 320, and another girl goes to pull, I think, 322, but she failed. So both of them failed, and I ended up winning state. It was insane.
So, man, that's quite incredible, Millie. Congratulations again on that. It's to win a state title is always special, and then to win it and not know, and even though things are kind of going your way, you still have all that indecision at the end of not knowing what's going to happen. It's really something. And your dad will tell you, as we're fixing to touch on, it really stands out when you have that opportunity, and it's a cool story to tell down the road. But it's always much better when you win.
Mhm.
JC, we're gonna mention. I see you got a nap buddy.
Yeah, she wanted to be on the show. This is Landry. This is the youngest.
Hey, Landry.
He said, hey.
So let's talk a little bit about throwbacks. To give a little bit of history, JC is quite the accomplished athlete. Played at Mississippi State, and really, I don't even remember how many sports you were doing back in the day when you were a rocket child. I know it was a lot, and there weren't any you weren't good at.
I appreciate that.
And obviously it's kind of went downhill. As you can see, JC's in a vehicle right now because he's waiting on baseball practice. It just keeps going. So it's real cool to see, those kind of things. About 20 years ago this fall, or about 20 years ago this summer, when we were getting ready for the 2005-2006 season, and then a lot of indecision comes up because a small little thing hits the coast called Hurricane Katrina. So, I mean, we don't even know what's going to happen. JC, you probably know the story. I was a volunteer as the coach, and I was trying to get Chris to come live with us because, I mean, we didn't know if Stanislaus was even going to be open. And not only that, not only did they open, man, you guys end up going on a run in the South and becoming South State champions. And then it really had a great group of guys, all the way, from MJ Joachim all the way to yourself and Caleb McQueen, and obviously we talked about Chris and then some of those other guys in the middle I'm drawing a blank on. And talk about history. So St. Stephen is the birthplace of ADFPA, which became USA Powerlifting. So I mean it's a lot of history there. And JC, I know just like me, you remember being in that gym when you can still see the line where the water was sitting. We're hosting a powerlifting meeting. We're like, man, should we be here? Look what's in the floor. But it was a little uneasy. Obviously, everything's much better now. But so it's remiss to not mention that when we talk about the fun part, which is so you guys kind of go on a tear in the South. There wasn't really anybody for you guys, so you guys don't really run into any team competition until you get to the state championship with us and Kosciuszko, who have been just really hammering it out. Going into that, we have won 4 state titles in a row, and then we lose the regional to Kosciuszko. Kosciuszko really stacked themselves to beat us, so they knew where we were going to be, and they did exactly what they needed to do. Well, so they beat us by whatever the points was. I think maybe 9 or 10 points. The great thing about powerlifting, top 3 go on. So the points don't matter as much as how many people can you qualify, what can you do next. Well, then we kind of closed the gap at North State, but they beat us again. But we know help's coming because there's some boys down south that are going to bring some thunder. And it really, we ended up depending on what you're about to talk about, your little showdown with a guy named Jerry Kern, who was quite the lifter himself, also from Kosciuszko.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. So I think it's really cool. I don't even know if you know this, Jim, but Caleb is Millie's cousin, also McQueen. So Millie's mom's dad and Caleb's mom are brother and sister. So
nice.
Powerlifting strength doesn't just come from my side, also from her side too. So she's genetically built for it. So it was kind of cool. I knew when I took her for the first time, she's always been strong. She's built very well. And we went and we lifted the first time, and the way I put the bar just to see what she could do, kind of test some things, put a 25, then I put a 35. And it was funny because she ripped 135, and I wanted her to know what it was like to fail day one. I wanted her to know what that was like, so that way we could get that out of the way. So I asked her, I said, what do you want to put on there next? You want to go 25? Now I was meaning 25 more pounds. She's like, yeah, let's just do it 25 on each side. So I knew, I'm like, this is going to crush her. So
Yeah.
we get underneath and, and I load it and immediately she goes down. Knees go inside and she goes to fall. I catch it and grab it. And I said, hey, this is all I wanted. I wanted you to understand what it was like to fail today. So that way, it's okay. It is not a big deal. We're going to keep going. We're going to fail in meets. There's going to be things that's going to happen. And look, she almost scratched at South State. And
So
emotionally, now there was a lot of stuff that, we could go into off camera on how things happen with certain judging and all that kind of stuff at certain locations. But it was a mental thing for a 15-year-old to be able to bypass and get through. So I'm super proud of just how not only just the aspect of her winning a state championship as a freshman, but really the mental aspect of the game of knowing, how to push yourself, when to push yourself, how long, and understanding, because not only does she powerlift, she also plays softball and she's a cheerleader year round. So she was in something the entire time that we were lifting. So we had to build, her training program around her other practices and all that stuff. And so there was a lot of times that like me as, a grinder and, also a father trying to understand like, hey, I can push her so far, but then also having to be able to say, hey, let's just take a break today. Lucky enough, we had Chris Tran and, that dude is an absolute just genius when it comes to this. And he was truly understanding with her. Anytime I said, hey, look, we got this. Hey, this is how she's feeling. He's like, hey, look, let's skip today. Let's get her some rest. Let's go tomorrow. And so it was really cool to have that aspect because I didn't have to be that hard nosed person. I could be coach and I could be dad at the same time and be able to kind of help her get through this. So it was really cool to kind of see the process for her. But, going through, we go to Moss Point for regionals. She qualifies at regionals. Then we go to South State and she has the little spoof at South State, but she ends up qualifying. And Millie will tell you this. From the moment we decided to do this and pursue this, I told her, I do not care what you do at regionals. I do not care what you do at South State. Make the top 3. And then when we go to state, you'll show everybody who you are because this is where the winners show up.
It's really something that is I tell you, that particular season that we were speaking on just a minute ago, that changed the perspective of how I coach for the rest of even now because you realize, okay, yeah, it'd be great to do this here, but it'd be much better to do it down the road. Let's do it as something that counts. It doesn't matter that we're going to do it at the Joe Bob Invitational with 25 people. Let's do this at state or nationals or regionals or whatever the big stage is at that point. It's yeah, it's really something, and for her to be able to have that guidance, not only from Chris but and from you, and then that patience is something that is really great. Especially it's probably something we wouldn't have had 20 years ago. No, we got to go. We got to do this now. Age is a wonderful thing on teaching that patience for sure.
And I had this conversation with a lot of people about her. They said, what was the most impressive part, her strength, all that. And I said, no. I said, she's light years ahead mentally. I said, that's why she won state. She was so locked in every meet. The pictures I have of her, like she's just, and I told her this, it's funny, when I was coming up playing ball, they always talk about there's no such thing as gamers. There's nobody that just switches it on and turns it on. And then when you play at an elite level, you meet those guys. You meet those guys that at practice, they go at a certain mode and they're, they get the job done. But when it comes to when the lights click on, they're a different person. And I told Millie, I said, you have the ability. You have that. You have something in you that when you get there, if you learn to just turn it on, you are going to, I told her, I said, you have to make people remember your name. That's what your goal is. Set the tone in your head that you're going to go out and build this. So, you take it back 20 years, right? And we have Hurricane Katrina. And it's crazy to think that because I remember coming back, people thought I was strong my whole life. My 9th grade year, I weighed 230 pounds and I could barely bench 2 plates, so the evolution of strength training and understanding, I went from the bigger, faster, stronger program to having Chad Rhodes, son of Doc Rhodes, coming in and teaching us. And I went from my junior year squatting 500 to my senior year squatting 675 for state. Like you just have these just mental openings where you see somebody that teaches you something and that teaches you how to push yourself and go. And, the things Chad did, back then, to kind of crank us up. And, I told Millie, I said, hell, if I slapped you in the back of the neck like Chad slapped me before my bench press, we probably go to jail now. It's so crazy. But man, to understand that game, and I was blessed. Chris Train and I have been friends since first grade, and so
Right.
we trained together, we worked together, our families grew up together, and so to see him, do the things he's done since probably just shows that was the beginning of that. But I did not put two and two together until I was sitting with the coach at the first deadlift at Kosciuszko, or when the Kosciuszko coach came up to me of kind of putting it back there because, I think I was like 75 pounds ahead of Jerry, and he was going to have to pull like 750,
Yeah.
to beat me, or 720 to beat me. I think it was 720
It
to
was
beat
something
me.
big. It was over the all-time record, and it was way out of his range.
Yeah. I
So we
remember
knew
I
as long as
laughed because the bar didn't even budge. Like it just, bent a little bit off the ground.
yeah,
But I do remember this was the thing was, Chad, I appreciated this moment in my coaching player life with Chad was he told me, he said, look, you're already ahead of him. He's going to pull 720, or he has to pull 720 to beat you. He's never even come anywhere near this. He said, if you really want to be a state champion, you got to go pull 650. He said, that way you solidify it. And you know that you did everything that you could to win a state championship. And I remember that moment for me was like, because I could have won either way. He was not going to pull it. I was already ahead of him. But it was that first learning moment of no matter if you're winning, why not push yourself further than you've ever gone before?
for sure.
And that's what I told Millie. That's the same aspect for her. But, she was in a way different, world of being a ninth grader with all these juniors and seniors, putting this pressure on her. And she had pressure, Jim, from Moss Point. Like
Yeah,
there was a girl there that literally was talking crap to her. And because she was a senior and Millie was a freshman, and she was saying, stuff like, she shook her hand one time, and you remember this, Millie? Like she shook her
Yeah.
hand, and she was trying to shake her hand really hard. And she was like, "No, you got to shake my hand again like a man."
She made me do
She
it like
said,
over and over
"I'm."
again. I
She
was
said,
like,
"I'm
what are
not a
you trying to
man."
do to me? And then I knocked her out on the whole thing. So
Yeah, and that was the thing. She ended up, she tried to, she could have literally gotten third instead of Millie getting second, and she could have qualified. Instead, she knocked herself out trying to beat Millie, and that was a bad math part, and it just happened. But she got to see adversity from the first meet, the second meet, all the way to state, and so watching her go through everything from the squat, and I told her, hey, look, this was crazy though, Jim. I'll send you the video for you to see it. Physical command was already there. He said that she didn't wait till he said
he said,
racket. So it's kind of, it is what it is. We knew where we were at, but it was no big deal. She ripped it. She ripped 285 like it was nothing. She probably could have got 300, but she ripped 285. So we went into bench. I told her, I was like, hey, look, we know what we're going to get. And what's funny is, those old school metal plates, they
oh
always
yeah,
seem heavier. So we were over there, warming up, and I think 95, she struggled with a little bit on the warm up, so I could see her getting in her head, and I said, hey, remember, the plates on the bar are way lighter than the plates. Don't even worry about it. Don't even stress that. Trying to get to that point to understand that. So she ripped 100, and then we went into deadlift, and the most she's ever deadlifted was 265. The
270.
most, 270, yeah, 270 at Moss Point.
hey
And,
girl, get it right. Yeah, tell him get it right. That's what I'm
yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
And I was talking with the other coaches over there, and I said, I said, yeah, most she's ever done is 270. I said, well, our goal is to get to 295. Our numbers were 255, 275, 295, and Chris put 305 on there, just in case. And so we went in there at 255, and I think the four girls, it was 250, 255, 255, 260. So I was like, hey, we're good. It's going to be a battle to the end. Well, then we go to the second lift, and I put Millie at 275, and two of the girls jumped to 295 and 290. And I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, it got in my head because I was like, damn, where the hell did they come from? Like, these
Yeah,
are some big jumps, and I knew one of them, the girl that scratched out a bench, like she was definitely could deadlift that. So I was like, man, that's kind of crazy. And then I got back in my head thinking the coaches were talking earlier about, playing mental games about weights and all that stuff. And so I walked up to Millie. She had 275. She had her headphones on, and I squatted down in front of her and I told her to take her headphones off. And I said, "Hey, I said, I need you to go rip 275 and I need you to make it look like butter. I need you to just make it look as easy as possible." And I said, "Then I'm going to get really loud and we're going to have fun and we're going to go for it." And so she's like, "Okay, cool." And I said, "But don't worry about how I act. Just understand it's all for the game." So she gets there, she rips 275. So I high five her and I'm like, "Hell yeah, Brignone 300, Brignone 300. We're going for it." So I knew right then, I'm like, she ain't never done 300 before. She ain't been close, but she ripped 275 just like it was nothing. So I'm like, all right, here we go. So they get over there, but then they start, and the coach comes over to me and goes, "Never done more than 270, huh?" And I said, "She hasn't. She hadn't. Like, she had never done it before." I said, "But it's state championship, you know?" And so comes down to it, and they next two girls come, and one of them, the one girl does 290, but Millie was ahead of her because of squat. So that girl had moved Millie to where they were kind of competing for third and second possible. And then the girl that went for 295, she missed it. So I knew right then when she missed, I saw it in her face, and I looked at Millie and I said, "Hey, this is game time now. Like it's locking in time now." Well, Chris comes running over there and we start doing the calculations and looking at the math. And I said, "Hey, she's going for 320. If she misses 320, this girl misses 300, she gets 305." And Chris looks at me and he goes, "She went state." And I said, "Yeah." And so I go and he said, just wait to see what happens with the 300." He said, "Because if not, we want to make sure that she places at least second or third and not to
Right.
go overboard on this." So I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I'm like sitting there waiting. The girl misses her second attempt at 300. So I look at Chris and he's like, "Time on platform." So I call time on platform, bump Millie to 305. Now she has no clue. She's
Right.
sitting over there in a chair with her headphones on, not even paying
Locked
attention.
in.
Yeah, so I bump her to 305. The girl comes up. She misses her attempt. The next girl comes and attempt at 300. Millie, they load the bar at 305. And I walk up and I'm tightening her belt and she looks at the screen and sees that it's 305. And she said, "Why did you change it?" And I said, "Because you're about to rip this. When you rip this, that girl's going to miss 320 because you're going to be in her head and you're going to win a state championship as a ninth grader. Go make them remember your name." She went up there. She ripped it, bawling her eyes out as soon as she pulls it, puts the bar down. White lights come over. Was probably the coolest in my sport career, the coolest moment I've ever had in my life. And I've
Oh,
played
for
the
sure.
NFL. I've played on Monday Night Football, bowl games. To have her win a state championship and be a part of it, by far, just the coolest thing ever. And she came over, she hugged me, and I kept her looking at me while they were loading the bar for 320, and kept talking to her. And I just told her, I said, "Look, I'm super proud of you. No matter what this girl does, you have done something that nobody else has done. You came up, you won a state champ, or you came up, you qualified all through this as a ninth grader. If you get second place, I am more proud of you than ever. You just PR'd and everything." And as I'm saying this, the girl pulls it, and she was at her knees, and I mean almost got it. And I'm sitting there watching, and she took a step back and left hand let go. And I turned Millie's head and I said, "But you just won a state championship." And so it was an incredible moment. Cool to share, to see. And then realizing that same situation, this girl had to pull 320, a guy had to pull 720 to beat me and beat her from Kosciuszko. So it seems like the Brignones have Kosciuszko's number right now.
Yep, there we go. Millie, so tell me that. I'm sure you've heard your dad say that stuff before, but how cool is that? How cool is it to kind of hear it again? Now that you've had a little bit of time to soak in the win and know that it's real and nobody's coming for the gold medal. At least not for a couple months. So
Yeah. I don't know. It felt super good. It just felt like everything was worth it. All the hard work I put in and all the dedication, all the starving myself the night before I go weigh in. Um, I like the remember your name thing always stuck with me. And whenever I did that, I had a softball game 2 weeks later against Moss Point, and I'm standing on third, and the Moss Point girl from powerlifting that ended up not placing at all, that had beat me at every single meet. Um, I heard her coach scream her name, and I was like, whoa. It's like, I didn't know she played softball. And like, she got to third base by me, and she was like, "Millie?" And I was like, "London?" And she was like, I was like, "No, long time no see." And she was like, "Yeah." And she was like, she told me congratulations again. I was like, it's really cool. that I made a statement there. Like everybody's gonna remember me, like my dad told me to.
Well, I mean, I tell you, that's just some great stuff. So I try to keep these sweet, but obviously short and sweet. But obviously, I mean, this went a little longer than normal, and that's perfectly fine because these are the stories that need to be out here that maybe hadn't been out here before, and I'm excited to be a part of sharing them. And Millie, to know about yours, I didn't get to watch it because I was at another meet, but I got to find out about it, firsthand experience from your dad, and then I got to watch your dad's because I was rooting for it for sure. I had a little bit on the line, so. But I mean, I want to thank you guys again. I know you guys both stay pretty busy. So anything you want to work in while you guys have the floor before we cut off?
No, I just want to thank you, Jim. I greatly appreciate it and appreciate all the help you had over the years and helping me even through my football career. And thank you for this. And, I will say this, she set a goal when we first started talking and we were going to win a state championship and we were going to put everything to it. And for anybody who does watch this, especially younger, I think goal setting and writing down your goals, is huge. And we talked about what she had to do to win a state championship and she wrote 670 on her mirror when we left South State, and her total was 670. And
That's
you don't
awesome.
think that's powerful to know, seeing that every day and putting that, it doesn't matter how young you are or old you are. She watched me write my goals on a mirror one time and she does the same thing. And I think that's huge. And so our goal was to win state as a freshman, come back and set all the state records as a sophomore. And then as a junior, she's going to make the records unbeatable and come back. And we're thinking of maybe going to a different weight class for her senior year and see how that works out. So we've got some pretty cool things that we've worked out, and I'm super proud of her. And just want to thank you, man, for having us on.
Awesome. Well, Millie, anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I just want to say thank you.
Well, hey, big fan of you guys. Millie, I'll be watching. JC, I know you've always got some big things going on off the platform, so it's incredible. It's incredible to watch. I know you got more kids coming up, so maybe there's more powerlifting stories to be told. So who knows? So, but thank you guys for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, man.
Yes, sir.